We're going to do Calculus Section 2.2 here. We're going to break this up into quite a few sections, but we're talking about basic differentiation, the constant and power rule only today. So before we had talked about in class about the long definition of a derivative and how we find derivatives, and we talked about how to get a derivative the long way, why it works out that way. The big thing that we had talked about is the derivative being the slope of a function. So the derivative is the slope, okay, of our function at any given point. So let's talk about some really quick rules here that are going to help us quite a bit. So the constant rule, really easy. It says the derivative of a constant function is 0. Now, we need to understand what the word constant means. Constant means not a variable. In other words, just a number. So like any digit, any number by itself is a constant. So if any real number, if we want the derivative of it, it's going to be 0. So a couple of examples here, just to roll through this pretty quickly here. What you're going to notice is I'm going to use a lot of different notation here when you see things. So it says d dx and then bracket 4. What this means is d dx, that means derivative. Okay, so we need to understand that. That means derivative of. So that's important. So the derivative of 4 is 0. Derivative of any constant is 0. It says y equals 6, find dy dx. So we would say dy dx, which also means derivative, equals 0. We have y equals 2, find y prime. There's a y with an apostrophe. That means y prime. Y prime means derivative. That's equal to 0. And our last notation is f of x. If we have f of x equals 1, find f prime of x. Again, that prime means derivative, so that means that, again, we have a constant here, so f prime of x equals 0. Okay, real simple there. Okay, so all constants are 0, and we also talked about some of the different notations you will see for derivatives. We just need to be comfortable with that. So moving on down, let's talk about the power rule here. Okay, the power rule says this. Now keep in mind, we're going to do a lot of individual stuff and then we're going to kind of pair it together. But what the power rule says is that if we want the derivative of a function to a power, so this says x to the n power, the derivative of that will be, we will take the power, multiply it by the front, and then lower the power. Let's just put this right into action so you see. So we have y equals x to the third power. Okay, so what does that mean? It means that if we're going to use the power rule to find the derivative, what we do is we take that 3, we multiply it by whatever's in front. So in this case right here, it's 1. We have 1x to the third. So now it's going to be 3x, and then what we do is we subtract 1 off of our power. So it's just 3 minus 1. And you don't have to write all this out. I'm just kind of showing you how it would work. So therefore, we have 3x squared. And that's what our y prime is equal to. Okay, next one, power rule here. Our f prime of x is going to be equal to 4 times 3, which is 12x. And then we lower our power by 1, so it's 12x to the third. Next one, we have y equals 4x. So we have y prime equals, now don't forget, this is really important. There is still an exponent on this. Even though you don't see it, it's still to the first power. So we're going to do 1 times 4, so we get 4, times x to the 0 power, because we subtracted 1 off of our power. And hopefully you remember anything to the 0 power is 1. So in this case, y prime is just equal to 4. Okay, next one, we have a multiple step problem because we have all of these. But understand a derivative can be found by doing them all one at a time. So we can separate them all into different pieces there. So this is going to be 6x squared minus 8x. I did 2 times 4 is 8. Subtracted 1 off the power, so we have 8x to the first, minus the derivative of negative 2x is going to be negative 2. 1 times 2 is 2, and then we have x to the 0, so that gets rid of that. And then our derivative of our constant is 0, so we don't need that. So this is our derivative. Okay, so again, you're using your power rule all the way through. 3 times 2 is 6, lower the power by 1. 2 times 4 is 8, lower the power by 1. 1 times 2 is 2, lower the power by 1, which gets rid of it, and then the derivative of a constant is 0. Okay, so that is basically all we're really worried about covering for this first part. So why don't you try and do these two on your own. Hit pause on the video, and when you're ready, hit play and see if you got the answers right. Hopefully on this first one you got that we have 4 times x is 4x, and then we lowered our power by 1, we get 4x to the third. The second one, 3 times 2 is 6, lower our power by 1, 6x squared. 2 times 1 is 2, lower the power by 1, we get 2x, minus 4, and then the 8 obviously goes away because it's a constant. So hopefully you got that. Let's move on to the back side of the page. So we have 2 things we need to cover here real briefly, and we're just talking about the derivatives of sine and cosine. Okay, real simple. The derivative of sine will be cosine, and the derivative of cosine will be negative sine. Now keep in mind, everything else works exactly the same. So what you see here is, you see like we have 2/3 sine of x. Well, the 2/3 is just going to be, it's in front of it, so that's going to stay. Okay, it's like, if we were doing a power rule, we would multiply 1 times 2/3 and the 2/3 would stay. So therefore, y prime here is just simply 2/3, and instead of sine of x, it's going to be cosine of x. Okay, next one, a little bit more difficult, but let's make sure we do this correctly. We have the derivative of 3. We do each of these separately. The derivative of 3 is just 0. And then we have minus, and the derivative of cosine of x is negative sine of x. So notice that minus still stays there. They're just going to end up canceling out. So 0 plus sine of x, our f prime of x, is just going to be equal to positive sine of x. Okay, and then our last one here, again, do these all one at a time. The derivative of 2x is 2 minus the derivative of sine of x is cosine of x, plus the derivative of cosine of x is negative sine of x. So we end up with y prime equals 2 minus cosine of x minus sine of x. Okay, so again, once you do the derivative of each one, make sure you simplify your signs and get everything that you need. Don't go, don't make this too difficult. It's just, the only thing you need to know from your trig derivatives at this point is that the derivative of sine of x is cosine, and the derivative of cosine is negative sine. Don't forget that negative. So again, try this one on your own. Hit pause for right now, try it, and then hit play so you can see if you get it right. Okay, so you see the answer that you have here. Again, the derivative of x squared is 2x. The derivative of 2 sine of x is just 2 cosine of x. And the derivative of 4 cosine of x is 4 negative sine of x. And then this negative and this negative would cancel out to become a positive. So that's how you get that. All right, that's all I have for you from this section. Take your Edmodo quiz if it's been assigned, if it's on the Edmodo page, and I will see you in class.